This is the Freego electric dirt bike, the X2 Pro electric motorcycle. I've put real miles on it across neighborhood streets, gravel paths, and a few rocky fire roads, and my honest take is simple. It's a thrilling machine that demands attention, both on the throttle and in the garage. On looks and feel, it leans hard into moto style. The frame is high-strength steel, the stance is tall, and the 19-inch wheels with 2.0-inch tires give it that narrow, aggressive profile. It sits substantial, and it rides substantial. The spec sheet says about 105 pounds, but moving it around, it feels heavier than most e-bikes. The cockpit is straightforward, a bright LCD that shows speed, battery, and trip info, a half-twist throttle that's easy to modulate, and a thumb shifter for the 7-speed drivetrain. The saddle is thicker than I expected and more comfortable than it looks, with an upright posture that works for both street and trail. The lighting is legit, bright headlight up front and a tail light that helps when rolling after dark. Overall, it looks like a small electric moto, and it rides closer to one than to a typical bicycle. From my experience, the performance story starts with the motor and battery. It's a 60-volt system with a 30-watt-hour pack, so 1,800 hours of energy. In plain English, that's a big battery for this segment. The brushless rear hub motor is rated at a 6,000-watt peak, which translates to strong, instant acceleration. Hub motors like this are quiet and simpler than mid-drives with fewer moving parts in the drivetrain. The X2 Pro has two personalities: a city mode that caps speed to about 28 miles per hour for calmer riding and places where lower speed is required, and an off-road mode that lets it rip. In my opinion, this split is useful. City mode feels controlled around people and traffic, while off-road mode is where the grin factor lives. About speed, the marketing calls out 52 miles per hour. My real-world GPS numbers have been more conservative. On flat ground with a full charge, I've seen low to mid-40s, and downhill runs can creep higher. Wind, rider weight, and terrain all matter, and this isn't a tiny scooter. It's a heavy, torquey e-moto. The acceleration is the highlight. It pulls hard and keeps pulling longer than I expected for a hub bike. Range is where I had to reset expectations. The advertised range is optimistic. From my experience, mixed riding in off-road mode with some hills and frequent throttle bursts gets me roughly 15 to 25 miles before the power starts to sag. In calmer city mode on flatter ground, I can stretch it into the mid-20s. Once the display drops past the halfway mark, I notice the punch fades, especially on climbs. That's a thing with high-power setups. The more you ask from the motor, the faster you drain the tank. The bike will still roll on pedals if you run it down, and the 7-speed helps a little, but you're pushing a heavy machine. It's doable on flat roads and not fun on hills. The suspension is a real bright spot. Full suspension soaks up potholes and washboard, and the front fork tracks better than I expected at this price. The rear shock is fine for my weight, but heavier riders might want a stiffer spring or tuning. It's planted and stable, more like a small motorcycle. It doesn't flick like a mountain bike, and you lean it rather than toss it. One important note, the rear hub is heavy, so there's a lot of unsprung weight in that back wheel. That makes jumps a bad idea. It can handle ruts and rough trails, but I avoid airtime. It just doesn't land predictably. Braking looks strong on paper. 4-piston hydraulic calipers and big 203mm rotors front and rear. Out on the road, the stopping power is solid, but the liver feel isn't premium. There's decent bite after the pads bed in, and it stops the bike well, but the modulation could be sharper. I adjusted lever reach to get a better feel with gloves, and that helped. Considering the speed and mass here, the brake spec is appropriate, even if the feel isn't top shelf. Let me talk about setup and reliability because it matters. The bike arrives mostly assembled, but from my experience, you should treat the first hour like a safety check. I went over the whole thing and retorqued the stem, axle nuts, rotor bolts, caliper mounts, and the rear suspension hardware. A few bolts were looser than I like. The included tools work in a pinch, but I used my own torque wrench and added medium-strength thread locker on a couple of key fasteners. I also checked spoke tension on the upgraded spokes and inspected cable routing and brake alignment. The manual is basic, so if you're new to this, go slow and triple-check the front axle hardware. After a few rides, I did another quick pass to make sure nothing settled. I've seen small hints of surface rust on basic hardware after wet rides, so I hit exposed bolts with a light protectant spray. On electronics, the LCD is clear in bright sun and the controls are easy to learn. I did run into a couple of random error codes that cleared with a power cycle. Nothing catastrophic for me, but it's a reminder that this is more moto than bicycle. I charge earlier than later and keep an eye on connectors. Support is available through Amazon messages and email, but responses haven't been instant on my side. If I'm buying a bike like this, I go in expecting to wrench a bit and troubleshoot basics myself. Key features that stand out to me are the 6,000-watt peak motor for real punch, the 60-volt 30-hour removable battery that slots out for charging, the full suspension that makes rough roads feel smoother, the hydraulic 4-piston brakes on 2-rotor 3mm rotors, the 19x2.0 tires that roll fast on hardpack, the 7-speed drivetrain that helps in a pinch, the half-twist throttle that's comfortable over longer rides, and the bright lighting package for visibility. The claimed torque is 130 newton-meters, which is a measure of twisting force, and it matches the seat-of-pants feel off the line. Fit-wise, the geometry works for a wide range of rider heights, and the 300-pound max load gives decent headroom. What I like most is the raw, instant acceleration and the way the suspension calms down rough tracks without rattling me to pieces. The riding position is comfortable for longer runs, and the bike feels stable at speed. The city off-road split makes it easy to choose between chill cruising and rowdy fun. I also like that the battery is removable for charging indoors, and the LCD is simple and readable. In my opinion, this is where the X2 Pro earns its place. Power, comfort on bad roads, and a grin every time you roll on the throttle. What gives me pause is the ownership commitment. You need to be okay with a hands-on setup, periodic bolt checks, and the occasional electrical quirk. The pedals are mostly a legal checkbox. Yes, there's a 7-speed, and it can move you along on flat ground if you're out of juice, but pedaling this weight isn't something I'd plan on. The range is highly sensitive to how you ride. If you hammer the throttle and ride hilly terrain, expect much less than the marketing number. The brakes, while strong on spec, don't feel as refined as the best hydraulic systems I've used. And at this weight, stairs or tight apartment hallways are no fun. It's perfect for riders who want a small electric moto vibe without paying premium brand prices, people who have easy ground floor access or garage storage, and anyone who values torque and trail exploring over featherweight pedaling. If you enjoy tinkering and don't mind preventative checks, the value is compelling. I'd recommend this for thrill seekers who treat it like a weekend toy or a fun crosstown ripper, not as a mission-critical commuter. In conclusion, the Freego X2 Pro delivers big smiles per dollar when measured by acceleration and capability on rough surfaces. It looks tough, rides stable, and has the power to back up its stance. It also expects you to be part rider, part mechanic. If you're comfortable with that trade, it's a blast. If you want zero maintenance, flawless range, and premium brake feel, you'll probably get frustrated. In my opinion, know what you're getting, plan for a proper setup, and you'll have a seriously fun, high-powered e-moto experience. I will leave detailed information about the Freego electric dirt bike for adults, X2 Pro electric motorcycle, in the comments for your reference. Thank you for watching.